Welcome to the Stellar Work Podcast, Jeff. How are you, man? How's
Thank
life?
you. Doing well. Very, very good.
Just to clear things up, you're in LA, right?
Yep, in Santa Monica.
Oh my God. That's just the time difference in recording this episode. It's getting so interesting. It's like, how late is it? It's 4 a.m. where I am.
Wow.
That's evening where you are. Hope you had a great week, man.
Of course, yeah.
Thank you so much for coming onto this show. I wanted to make an episode about engineering management at big tech, because I feel big tech is always a bit at the forefront. And we met in San Francisco, so I'm really happy to have you here to give us a bit of a glimpse of what it looks like and what it will be in the future. Before we dig in, can you give us a bit of an introduction to who you are and maybe the career stages that you went through?
Yeah, so let's see. I grew up in Canada, and then I came to the US when I was like 22, 23. I worked for Google for 10 years, was working at YouTube. Then I've been at Snapchat for about, I think, 7 years. And yeah, I would say there was sort of typical career stages. So you first kind of start as a junior engineer, right? And back then you had to write your own code. You didn't have AI, so you had to learn that stuff. So after a couple of years, then you're kind of like a established engineer. Usually you're kind of independent. You don't need a manager to like help you that much. You kind of get your work done, but you're not really the senior engineer, which is when you're kind of like proposing your own bigger projects or saying you're going to do something pretty novel, pretty big. And usually the senior engineer can lead, multiple people, sometimes even a larger amount of people. So I did that. Then at Google, I went to staff, which is in a way kind of similar to senior, except I think you just kind of own a larger part of your team roadmap. So let's say you have a team of 10, 12, 20 people. You might have one of the big 3 projects you're kind of leading. And then sometimes those staff engineers, they kind of like become like half a manager, which was kind of what I was doing, where I was helping people with career growth, mentorship. Especially at Google back then, I felt like it was more the challenges were people or organization related rather than tech related, especially as it got bigger. So that was a big role. And then moved to Snapchat. I started as an IC at Snapchat, but I think after 1 or 2 years, moved to management. Then I've been a manager ever since, pretty much.
How did engineering management change within your career? We saw a couple of things that are happening, and of course AI is now dominating all the discussions about how engineering teams work. But can you walk me through like the major things that impacted your career when it comes to engineering management or orchestrating engineering teams in general?
Yeah, I think for a while it was actually just traditional engineering management. And then I think I actually started my management career a little later, right? So some people will start, after 5 years of being an IC, but I think I was like 11 years of being an IC, right? So I had a pretty comfortable background technically, but, I still had a lot to learn people-wise. So I think that's where most of my focus was on learning the people management side. But I had sort of been like half a manager for a while, right, as a kind of people tech lead. So I think for a while it was pretty traditional. And I think really the obvious thing that changes is AI, right? So I think AI really started to take off like last year. And I think a lot of companies even this year are kind of like beginning the year like, whoa, right? It's not just, some sloppy stuff. Like you can actually get real work done, right? So I think there was another surge this year. And I think just engineering management has to adapt to it. And what's changed for me is like around mid last year, I had that sort of like, this is kind of really different moment, right? So before that, you had your Copilot, you had your autocomplete, you had stuff where you were like, all right, that's pretty cool. Like maybe it'll give me a 20% efficiency boost. But a lot of the things I learned were actually just from personal side projects. So about mid last year, I started going like, okay, let me try a side project now. Like I've heard a lot about AI. Let me just try it. Let me see how good it is. So I was like, okay, I want to make a AI RPG. I want to, at least say hello world. I want to just, hit up the ChatGPT endpoint, right? So I'm like, how long will this take? I'm like, let me just try it. And I didn't even use anything fancy. Didn't use Cursor. I was just using Gemini to write the code, copy and paste it, run it, right? So in 30 minutes, I had a website, and it actually hit an API, like an LM. I was astounded. I was like, not even like just like making the code, but like telling me where to click on Google Cloud Console, how to like click on everything instead. I was like, wow, like that would have taken me like a week, maybe full time even, right? Just to like figure out what to click on, set everything up, debug it, iterate. So that was when I had that moment where I was like, the world has really changed. And of course it gets better. And how does it relate to management? I think as a manager, you do need, especially like a frontline manager, you do need to have a sense of what ICs are doing, what makes sense, like how to optimize their work. And I think that has just changed a lot. And in some ways, engineering managers, I think, still have to do even overtime work there, because it's not like someone's going to go relax on everything else and take lots of time to learn IC stuff, right? Like, I think you kind of have to pull a bit of double time, unfortunately, or fortunately, if you like it, where like I have to keep up with things. I have to know what the latest things are. I don't think you have to necessarily be like the expert on your team, but you definitely need to be, I don't know, top 25%. Like you have to be able to like help your engineers, help them debug, point them to things. So I think that is the big change. And even for bigger leaders, I think you still need some of that, because there's just a sort of very big, how do I call it, spectrum of AI adoption, right? Like you'll have some managers who are kind of like me, who are like, oh, I've really done a lot of stuff, I want to really learn it. And some people are kind of like, is it really that good? Like, you tell me, right? Like, I haven't tried it out that much. But I think the people who haven't tried it out very much, as time goes on, right, things will kind of fall further behind, and it'll be, I think it'll be challenging if you're not up to speed. So, really long answer there, but let me know if that answers your question.
Good. Can you walk me a bit through the AI stack of an engineering team at Big Tech? How does it look like? Is it just you kind of have your Claude and you plug it into whatever you have? And how does that look like?
Yeah, I would say so. It depends on the company, but there can be like internal services to help you debug things or whatever. I feel like at most companies, though, they're still like kind of emerging, right? You'll hear about Stripe and stuff like that, right? So some people are pretty far ahead. But I think for us and for other people, a lot of it is just, you've got Cloud Code, you've got Cursor, you've got Codex, you've got your standard things. Are you using them well? I don't hear too much about anything super special, right? Even friends talking to you at Meta as well, right? Yeah.
And is it just within your IDE, or is it beyond that?
It would be both. I think most companies have started to try the proper like CLI tools like Cloud Code, Codex, but still a lot of people are on IDE, and I think a lot of people are still even on autocomplete, actually.
And are you creating your own AI features within companies, or is the trend rather to use the existing features, like to build, let's say when you're using Anthropic products, you have like co-work, skills, projects, and all of that going on? Or is it more that you build your own tools, let's say with Cloud Code, and have them running as agents, for example?
Right. I think each one will have a different sort of decision, right? So skills, I think most people, if they're not, they should use default Anthropic skills, but you may customize it, you may build your own, but you're still should be aware of them. I mean, maybe some people aren't, but you should be. And then you have the other extreme, right? Very unlikely another company is going to build a coding agent like Cloud Code, right? Although, maybe it's open source, so you can't, right? But before that, it's like, okay, why would we make this investment when Anthropic has solved it, right? And then there's always these middle ground things, like Anthropic just released their agent platform, whatever, right? So every company will probably go, okay, I can build some of this on my own. I could use some of it. Maybe it's going to be a hybrid. But if you think about that price, it's like 8 cents per hour or something. Like, if you have a company like us with like billions of users, right? And depending on that usage, that could be expensive for a core feature. So I think the way most people will approach it and already have is, kind of use case by use case.
As an engineering manager, where do you see the actual returns of using AI? Is it speed, efficiency, or is there something beyond that?
So I think most companies have not experienced this yet, but my goal would be to bring the velocity to a sort of bigger company where it's more complex. But I think what's possible is what's possible personally in Greenfield, which is everywhere. So not even just coding, right? First, even before my design doc, what should I even do? I'll have my own ideas. You brainstorm with AI. You're like, what are some good ideas? You do the research. Then you make that design doc. Then you make that roadmap, break it down. Then you get the coding. Then after the coding, you're like, okay, how am I testing it? You use AI to help you test it, AI for the code review. And then even after like you're deployed, you're going to have AI like looking at the metrics, helping you brainstorm some more metrics. So I do see that as sort of like part of the whole life cycle. But I think, most companies, even OpenAI to some degree, right, they're still not fully experiencing what you can greenfield. Because of course it's harder when you have more people, you have brownfield code bases. But I think that's what's possible. I think right now what's mostly optimized is coding and part of code review. But even code review, I think people can do a lot more. Like a lot of people are like, oh, I got one code review bot. I've got some code review. I'm like, well, other ones exist, or you can customize it. I actually think like probably 4 or 5 different bots with your own custom bot is a good balance, rather than the sort of one bot that many people use. But I think most people are pretty focused on the coding and approaching the code review. And then, of course, when it gets to larger companies, you have a people element. So it doesn't matter how fast you code. If people take like 3 days to look at your PR and then you update it, they're like, oh, 3 more days, right? That'll take a long time.
Have you been part of the team or the organization that were introducing the new tools or were introducing AI to engineers? And how did that look like? Because there's just so much going on out there, and there are just so many tools that you can use. How does such a company decide what they should look at and what to avoid?
Right.
To just focus, put your hats down, and actually get some work done.
Yeah.
And
I'm not
spend
part of
all
the
the time
official team or
on
anything.
Twitter looking for the new tools.
Right. I'm not part of the official team or anything, right? But I do a lot of advising of teams and stuff. And, kind of in my spare time, I don't even answer questions directly necessarily, but I see some question. I'm like, yeah, I bet my AI can answer that. Then I'll paste the answer to the A, and they're like, oh, okay, I got an answer, right? How I think everyone should approach it, not saying everyone is, but how I think you should approach it is like, you should still have your main roadmap. And maybe some people are like, okay, we're the core AI infra team, we're going to build something specific. But I don't think you want to be like, all right, let's pause all the work, go experiment, because, you'll probably learn something, but then again, you have a business to run. So I actually think most people should go through a thought exercise and compress their timeline and go, okay, make your timeline and go. You already know that usually when you make a timeline, it's already too short, right? But fine. Make the timeline and then go, okay, now this timeline, we're going to cut it in half. So you think it's going to take 3 months? We need to do it in a month and a half. And then let's work backwards. What would happen? Usually it's going to be, oh, my build is like 1 hour long. My code reviews take 2 days. Then I think you should restructure things. So when I've seen things work well is when people kind of do this process, they do that, and they actually like are really focused on bottlenecks. So there's some projects I'm working on. They're kind of like, how do I put it? Like a permanent hackathon in a way. So like when you have a hackathon, you're kind of like, oh, this is going to be a blocking thing, a code review, right? Because you're all kind of in it together. You're trying to build something together. You want it quick. But when you're not in that mode, you kind of are like, oh, I got a code review, but my P0 is here, and maybe they're not working the same project. So I'll review that later today, right? And then sometimes you start reviewing it later in the day. Maybe it's 4 o'clock. You're like, this is bigger than I thought. And then I have to take it tomorrow morning, right? And then sometimes it's 3 days later, right? And through no fault of your own, but I think the way to do it properly is like you have teams just really focused and reviewing code, and then the reviewer has to have the same kind of incentive and goal, right? And then you're going to get a lot of velocity. But sorry, I think there's something. Make sure my
is your Claude messaging you?
Yeah,
is your little lobster pinging you on your phone?
So it pings me a lot on Slack, but it would be too much. So I have all of those notifications off, and then I basically only look when I want to. But then I guess someone was texting me. It was weird. I thought it was on silence. I just turned it off. I always get confused.
Um,
But yeah, that is another interesting point about the distractions, right? So it's like, as a worker, right, you're always going to get Slacks and emails and all these
mm,
things. And actually, with AI, it's even more, right? Because your AI workers can be doing stuff. So that is actually another part of optimization people don't talk about a lot, where you actually try to do like Slack unread zeros and inbox zero. Actually, um, I sometimes I'll see someone else's computer. It's just full of notifications from people and maybe even bots. I'm like, okay, like how do you know what's going on, right? But yeah, to get back to your point, I think if you do it well, you have a good loop where like the same people who are like really working together, they have the same incentive like that hackathon, right? And then when it's not working well, like you might have one person and they have to get code reviews from another team, and or you're not trying to optimize the build time, for example. Right?
what is your personal strategy to stay ahead of the curve and be informed and sort of maybe distinguish between signal and noise when it comes to new tools, new techniques, ideas that are out there? It really filters
Yeah. So
what do you want to implement.
yeah. So I would say the sort of like non-magical thing is actually more time. So outside of my normal job, I'll probably spend another 20, sometimes even 30 hours a week on different AI stuff. So that was a choice I made. I'm not sure if I'll do it for like 5 years, but at least another year or two while things are moving fast. So I just decided that's kind of just what's needed for the industry. And then with that time, I kind of go like, okay, if I see something, does this apply to something I could do like right now at work or right now in one of my personal projects? And there's no real like good system besides just you have some nuance or judgment, right? Like I think sometimes people are like, oh, I'll spend 1 hour doing this and 30 minutes doing that. And it may work for some people, but I'm more of a sort of instinctive and whatever type of person. So for example, I saw the Karpathy wiki thing, right? And I'm like, okay, great. It sounds pretty cool. I wouldn't say I've seen an amazing thing from it yet, but I probably spent about an hour messing around with it. So I'm like, all right, I built some wikis. I made a wiki to be like, okay, replace my own judgment. And then I'm seeing what the wiki's doing. I'm like, okay, that seems kind of reasonable. I'm not sure if I'll integrate it just yet, but I'm like, was that worth probably an hour of time to maybe improve my custom code review agent with a 20% expected value? Yeah, probably, right? But would it be worth a week of full-time work or whatever, or a week of part-time work? Maybe not, right? So that's kind of how I think about it. And then I'm also thinking about, say, that particular thing. Right now, my custom code review agent is not enforcing that workers produce videos of their work. So I saw this cursor video, I was like, okay, that looks really cool. They're making videos of their work, of the terminal and of the output. And then I saw that harness engineering article where they're like, okay, they make a whole video of the website, whatever. It's not open source. You don't know how often those agents really comply, but I think it is possible to have some compliance there. So I'm kind of working on that. And I think if that wiki thing doesn't like really enforce that or really help unblock it, then I may like pause on that wiki thing and go like, okay, maybe that's not really the right approach. Maybe I should just have some better prompts or trim down my prompts, right? Or there's something else to do. But that would be a big velocity unlock for me to close the loop on AI workers kind of generating evidence. And then once you generate evidence and it's enforced, you can actually loop. And then even if it's less efficient, you're at least like working async, if that makes sense, right? So I'm kind of like, okay, that's one of my main core things to work on in the personal project. And any info I come in that's good about that, I will consider. And if not, I might go like, okay, that's kind of like a backlog thing. Maybe we'll look later. Or another thing is like, I've got OpenClaw. I like it a lot, but it's pretty unreliable, right? So I did sort of do a side task, maybe invested 30 minutes in this Hermes agent. I'm just always seeing it on Twitter. And probably this weekend I'll be like, all right, let's try this Hermes agent now. Right. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty funny. So it has a lot of whatever, but I'm like, okay, let's try it out. Right. And I'll be like, you know what? If it's better, I'll switch. But switching is probably a good amount of work. So it's probably at least 3 to 4 hours of work, I think. So yeah. We'll see. Right. Yeah. So kind of like case by case.
Do you see an increase in like, what is the increase in speed when it comes to engineering teams who use AI tools, who make themselves comfortable with, versus the engineering team, I don't know, 5 years ago?
Yeah. I think when I think about like organizations and what I've heard, I don't really see that 10x yet, because even if you can AI generate the code faster, the rest of the process is not very optimized. So, my team has been doing pretty well. I want to say like maybe double speed, right?
Mm.
But imagine like the whole org was really well optimized. Every part of the software development lifecycle was really efficient just in general and kind of well suited to AI. I think you could go 10x probably. I don't think you'll go
So
100x because there's still
yeah,
go ahead.
um, where do you think the bottleneck is moving when it's not coding anymore? When it's not writing code?
So
You already talked about organizational things that would need to change to really get to that 10x.
yeah.
So where do you think the bottleneck is moving?
So every part where human is involved is a bottleneck. So first deciding what to do, then writing a design, a plan, getting agreement, consensus, because especially at a larger company, if you work on something and people don't agree and they're the decision makers, it doesn't kind of matter. Like it'll get shut down, right? So the sort of sign off type of thing. Then there's the coding, which has improved, but that's not always the bottleneck. Then it's the code review, right? Especially when you need to get a code review from someone not on your team, different incentives, that takes a while. Then there's even building, right? Sometimes for large projects, like especially Snapchat, the build could take like an hour, 30 minutes, whatever. Then there's also like sort of, I don't know, I'm not exactly sure what to call it, but I guess I'll call it like iteration, in terms of like, you got to like put it out there, whether it's a small experiment or you're dog fooding it with the team, but you need to get a certain amount of like sample to be like, is it ready to go from 1% to 5% to 10%? That could take some time. I think it could be faster, but right now it still takes time. And it's actually sometimes a launch decision. So very often for an established product, if you are making a change, it's not all going to be positive. So you're going to have trade-offs. Some features will do better, some will do worse. And then you're going to be like, all right, I've got to talk to 5 different teams and make some decision or something. Right? So every part of that will change the velocity. And then that's why you see this like, one person by himself, like Pete Steinberger or whatever, like 100x, like make OpenClaw and change the world all by yourself, at least at the start, right? And organizations, with all the people, decision makers, not as much.
Peter Steinberger really revolutionized the industry, I think. And
definitely,
I think he was so much in experimentation mode. So he had so much freedom, so much interest and curiosity about the topic. I'm really wondering, like, as an engineer, you would need to make yourself a little bit comfortable, just set up your space, create your agents, maybe have a few automations running, like make yourself comfortable in your own AI world that you create. But how do you get to the point where you get people to be as curious as they need to be in order to really dig into all of that stuff? Because it's not happening overnight, right? And when you work in, I know big tech is not a 9-to-5 job, but still it's a job, right? And how do you get teams or maybe organizations to a point to be curious enough to really dig into those tools and adapt and change their way of working?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think there's any good answer to that. I think how I would approach it though is like, not everyone's going to be Pete, right? I mean, but let's say you have someone who's 20% of Pete, right? Like that's probably still pretty good. I think you do need a critical mass of like sort of early adopters, innovators, people who really care about the space and the efficiency. And then you kind of need that in the company, maybe within a team. And then I think once there is a bit of like a healthy momentum in the company, then you go like, okay, like, should this stay as a team? Should we spread some people around? Maybe they're tech leads in different teams. Maybe we bring in a tech lead from another team to work with them. But I think when you don't have enough of that critical mass of either combination of talent or desire, right, then your company may not move. And who will really do it? I don't know. Nature, nurture, right? Hard to say. But yeah, I think, how would I put it? There's going to be some employees who like will try things out on their own, experiment on their own, and they're going to learn faster. And there's some people who are just, to be fair, they want to do a job, and then that's their job. Right?
Anything an engineering manager can do to sort of help the process?
Yeah. Like what I do is like I try to lead by example, get people excited. So I'm kind of like, okay, look, like I spent this much time. Here's a cool thing I did outside of work or even inside work, right? Like here's something to do. And then I've seen some teammates go like, okay, I built my own thing. I'm getting excited about it. Not everyone will, but I think kind of like leading by example, encouraging it is good. But I would say even if you're a manager, your sort of like influence is a bit limited to some degree, right? And I really don't think it makes sense so sometimes people are like, oh, like let's make some rule. Like everyone has to use, I don't know, 50 million tokens a day or right. Or like, you're like, oh, it's like a company rule now. And I can see why it's being done, but it feels like if you don't know the root cause, then, you're kind of like doing something, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe it works for some people, but I would be surprised.
And I've seen you do far more. You even build a small community on Discord.
Yeah, exactly.
And meet up regularly.
So for example, I've got...
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Oh, yeah. I've got like some coworkers in that Discord, like so the people who are the most interested will talk and, talk about stuff outside work, inside work. I think there's always going to be some people who kind of want to do that. And then usually they're like force multipliers within their teams or orgs.
Maybe not looking at the individual, but at a team or at a org level. Have you seen any changes in how teams are structured when they really start working with AI tools and having their companions on the side? Does that impact how teams are formed?
Yeah, from what I've seen, I think it might still be a little too early for that to change. I think it should change though, but I haven't really seen it change, just
so what do you think it should be?
Yeah. So I think it actually should be a lot flatter and maybe even a lot less people actually. So let's say I was starting a company now, and you gave me some capital. I would be very careful actually. I would first be like, what's the problem I'm trying to solve? Blah, blah. And then eventually I'll look at my backlog and go like, okay, what business value am I dropping with my backlog? Let's say I've got my AI RPG and someone is like, hey, multiplayer would be cool. I haven't had time to do that, right? Even if I was full-time, maybe I wouldn't have time because I'm doing other stuff. So I'm like, you know what? That is quite valuable. That could change the destiny of my product if there was multiplayer. Can I find someone who I'm pretty aligned with in terms of how to work, right? Velocity and stuff like that? Probably I could. Right. So I think even my own side project of AI RPG could use like 2 people. But I would definitely be careful about going further and going like, oh, like 10 people or something, right? Because I'm like, even if you could find 10 people who are like sort of properly efficient with AI, it may not like satisfy or be justifiable for what the business needs. But I would say my side project, assuming it had capital, whatever, easily could do a couple people. But the tricky question is you have that existing business with existing people and how exactly will it go, right? Yeah.
But would you still go and staff teams like very cross-functional and have someone doing design, UX, testing, coding? Or is it more like, okay, you don't actually need roles because you have a baseline level of knowledge, which is the knowledge level of your AI, and everyone can do basically everything, sort of?
I don't have a super strong opinion. I think it should be a mix of that though. Like I do see like, people working across teams. It's pretty easy for me to work in any code base actually, but I still do think it's good to have like, all right, this team at least owns this product and they're driving it, right? Because I think even if like you can work, like especially at a big company, right? Like I don't know, Snapchat probably has like hundreds of teams or whatever, right? Like, and then if you're like, oh, like you own hundreds of teams, okay, like what's gonna happen, right? So I think it still should be mixed though, like especially if you have a team dependency and you're kind of like, I need to get something done in this code base, like, maybe just try it. It might not be that hard, right? So I think a mix versus like in the past, you'd be like, oh man, I'm not even going to try to learn how to get the IDE to set that thing up or something.
And is it affecting roles and titles? Because what I've seen from Anthropic, and they might be super far ahead when it comes to those type of things, is that they call everyone member of technical staff, basically. And they don't even care what your specific roles and background are. Everyone's just like, do the job, right?
Yeah.
Do not bother with roles and all of that.
Yeah, I kind of like that, but I think taken to its extreme, you may have some areas underserved. So I think role is different than title, though, right? Like it's a little debatable, but at some points, like especially at Google, your level used to be kind of hidden, right? And then they revealed it, and every company goes through different things. I probably think the level should not be public, but whatever, right? That's kind of how most companies went. So maybe Anthropic doesn't have a public level. Great, right? Like that's probably good. But I still do think you should have areas of ownership. And I think Anthropic does. For example, there's some, Cloud Code product manager or something, like I'll see people on Twitter, right? So I don't think you're kind of like the product manager of everything, but I do think you're kind of right about like teams are probably growing this way, and maybe Anthropic is the most ahead on like, oh, you can work in other people's areas of code bases. I definitely think that should be how it is.
Maybe on a whole different topic, because I get this all the time when I talk to people listening to the show, and when I talk to people on LinkedIn or on Twitter, is how AI is affecting the engineering career path, and especially when it comes to like entering the job. Like, is it really taking away all the entry level jobs? And if it is, where do the seniors come from? Is it just from side projects, and then you graduate from university, run your side project for, I don't know, 3 years, and then pitch with your side project for a senior engineering role? Like, how does that affect the career?
I actually think what you said might be a path for some people. It sounds kind of weird, but maybe, right? I think, the interesting thing is like, what's going to happen is what's going to happen. It's not really in anyone's control. So I think all the things you said will happen or are happening, right? Like, will there be less junior engineers hired? I think so. Is that unfortunate? It is. And where will the senior engineers come from? I don't think there's any good answer to that. And it could just be a problem that probably no one will solve, actually. So I think that'll keep happening. But I do think there's a certain, like, I don't know how to want to put, like, the top 5% of new grads or something who are just, they learn really fast, they do stuff. Even when they're doing AI coding, they actually have the sort of either discernment or ability to understand what their code is doing to. For example, have you heard of CMux, the terminal?
No.
Okay, great terminal. I definitely not paid for this. CMux, definitely try it out. What's good about it is like, I feel like it's actually the best terminal I've ever used, especially for AI. Because it just has a good design. So they have vertical sort of tabs, workspaces. You can split it horizontally as well. And they have good notifications where like, oh, this tab or terminal is ready. It's like something I've always wanted, but I've tried like, say, Warp Terminal, whatever, Ghosty, whatever. Like everything I've tried just didn't exactly hit it for me except for this. So this is just kind of like the perfect UI I've always wanted. And I think it was built by like I even talked to their founder.
CMux, so it's CMUX?
UX, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And whatever, they're like young guys, like they're in their early 20s or something. And I don't know, I think they have some YC or whatever, right? But yeah, I was pretty impressed by that. And I think, you're going to have sort of like this top 5% of young people who, I think they could easily get a job at most places, right? Based on what they've done, if they want to stop doing that. But you have this sort of top 5%. Probably those people will be fine, but for other people, I think it will be a very challenging career, especially starting out. Versus like before, right? At the peaks of it, like I want to say like even when I started like in 08, I wouldn't call that the peak, but maybe like 2012 to like 2016, 2017 or something, right? It was very like, I don't want to say easy, but like lots of abundance. Everyone was like, oh man, there's so much more demand for these engineers than supply. But I think that has changed even with first COVID sort of, right, and then with AI.
What is the main differentiating factor between a junior and a senior engineer by now? What would you say?
So let's see. I guess there's the obvious thing, experience, right? So no matter how talented someone is, if they've never seen something before, they kind of like, they'll have more challenges. So let's say you've got a really good junior engineer, but they're kind of like, hey, this person didn't answer me on Slack. And I'm like, okay, did you send them a direct message or did you CC them? And they're like, oh, I CC'd. You're like, okay, you probably should direct message, because have you seen this person's screen? Or look at your screen. Your screen is full of, of notifications. Are you really getting to all of them? Like, oh yeah, okay, right. So someone young in their 20s may not just have those kinds of things, right? But I think people who are very like sort of talented, motivated can close that gap pretty fast. So I think, in a couple of years, you can really get to that level that, people will call senior.
I was just wondering whether we could like move the goalpost a little bit when it comes to junior engineers and have them contribute more to open source, even during university, or change university in a way that their subjects are more revolved around like actually building stuff and trying to get someone to actually use the things that they are building,
right,
instead of like all the theory.
Definitely a good idea. I think that's definitely a good idea, and I do think that theory is valuable in some way, but I can't remember the last time I used it, right? So maybe it's subconsciously helping me. So there's another guy I know. He works on Agent Orchestrator. Have you heard of that open source framework?
Yep.
So he's like some other young guy. I think he's in India in his early 20s, and he's like, I think, one of the main contributors. There might be like two of them, right? So there's the guy who started it, and there's this guy. And he's just reviewing a lot of PRs, writing a lot of code. He's really involved. And I think that is probably a lot more valuable than like, most even entry-level jobs you'd get, because he's like making decisions, and there's like, I don't know, probably thousands of people are using it, at least hundreds active, right? And he's kind of like figuring out how, when do I use Hermes agent versus OpenClaw versus like working directly in the terminal. So not to say that'll happen to everyone, but that's another good example of someone very young really diving into problems and figuring it out and gaining good experience. And I think with both of those cases, like the CMUX guy and this agent orchestrator guy, what's good is like you have a feedback loop. So let's pretend, the CMUX guy just vibe coded everything and never understood it. Well, probably the app would crash, and then he would lose some investors or something, right? Or the agent orchestrator guy, let's say like he just vibe coded a lot of stuff and the framework was broken for a week, right? Like you'd probably be losing users, you'd lose something. So if you have like that open source thing you mentioned with a very good feedback loop, that can be a very good way to learn. If you have an open source thing that no one's using and you're kind of just going, oh, great, right? Then yeah, maybe not as much.
Yeah, true. I wonder like if you could go back in time and go to yourself who's just at the beginning of becoming an engineering manager. Is there any advice you would give your younger self at that point?
I think when I started, I made the typical mistake of being kind of micromanagey, right? And there's a subtle way you can be micromanagey. So the most obvious one is like, hey, where's my status update every hour, right? That's very obvious. Everyone hates it. So I didn't do that. And I didn't even do status update every day or whatever. But I would be very engaged and very involved. And in a way, if like, how would I put it? If I'm talking about something, it is implicitly a bit of a check-in, because I'm a manager, there's a formal relationship. But I was used to talking to people like a peer, like an engineer. So I'd be like, oh yeah, this could be better, whatever, right? I'm always engaging. And I think I usually did have something valuable to say, but depending on the nature of what I was saying, I wasn't weighing in the sort of emotional impact of your manager's checking in on you. And then sometimes that can be a bit negative, where someone feels a bit demoralized and they're like, why is he talking to me so much, right? Like, why isn't he more hands off? And it didn't even mean anything was bad, but it just can feel bad. Especially back then when I started, because when I started, it was more like managers were more like, oh, I'm really like a people manager. I'm not too technical. Like, and then when you get in there, you're like, oh shit, something's wrong. I think now it has actually evolved or changed a lot, because I think the managers should be more technical, especially with the AI focus, right? So that's a little different now. But yeah, I would say like the old advice I would give myself is just be aware of the consequence of every single interaction with your team, because if you ask something or talk to them, you are their manager, you're in a position of power, and it can sort of make someone worry or something. So, you can even do a really quick thing to be like, hey, just checking in, nothing's wrong, but, I want to learn about this thing, versus I'm like, oh, how come this is using this database or something, right? That sounds a little more ominous. And especially when things are said on Slack or a Google comment, right? Like you can see a sort of, it just sounds a lot more ominous when you say something online versus like in a meeting, right? So back then it was also during COVID when I started, or like right before. So a lot of interaction was like not in person. It was like in a video conference or Slack or Google Docs. So yeah, I think the main thing, and it could be good for especially managers who switch from engineering, like an IC, to a manager role. You are truly no longer a peer. There is a formal relationship. There is a power dynamic, and if you're not aware of it, your actions do have a good amount of emotional impact. You've got to be pretty careful and pretty nuanced in your communication. Yeah.
If people want to learn more about engineering management at Big Tech, or follow your content, maybe learn from you how to orchestrate the AI agents around themselves, what would be a good way to reach out and learn a bit more?
Yeah, definitely. LinkedIn, got like my LinkedIn URL. I also do some mentoring and stuff, so I got a MentorCruise page.
Okay, so people could just reach out and go like, hey Jeff, I need some help. Yeah. Can you be my mentor? I have this project going on.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. It's really cool. I put all the links into the show notes. And Jeff, thank you so much for jumping onto this episode with me. It's really interesting to learn from you and your career. And happy to have you again, and maybe revisit the topic of engineering management.
Of course. All right. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks. Have a good one. Bye.
Take care.